Effective immediately, the United States Navy, widely regarded as the most formidable force on the planet, has entered a phase of total blockade deployment. This operation is aimed directly at every vessel attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz. This is no longer a mere warning or a diplomatic signal, but a clear military imposition of control over a strategic waterway that dictates the flow of global energy. The date of April 12, 2026 has now become a definitive milestone of global tension. It was on this day that the ceasefire negotiations in Islamabad officially collapsed after 21 hours of continuous, grueling deliberation. The atmosphere of high-level diplomacy has shifted into a state of direct confrontation as every door to reconciliation appears to have been slammed shut. Vice President J.D. Vance did not shy away from the grim reality when he addressed the public, stating quite simply that the bad news is that a deal has not been reached. This admission confirms that the breakdown is no longer a possibility but a finalized reality. Observers note that the weight of this failure seems to fall more heavily on Tehran than on Washington. Following this diplomatic fracture, President Donald Trump acted without any strategic delay or hesitation. He issued a staggering announcement on the Truth Social platform, officially confirming the commencement of the naval blockade. This was far more than a political statement. It was the activation signal for a new and dangerous phase of escalation in the Middle East. According to the communications released by the president, Iran had previously committed to keeping the Strait of Hormuz open to international traffic. However, Washington alleges that Tehran failed to honor this commitment. This disruption in the transport chain has placed immense pressure on multiple world economies, providing the justification for the current military action. Adding to the volatility are reports that Iran may have deployed naval mines beneath the surface of the water, even as their traditional naval forces have been severely degraded. While the actual extent of this mine threat remains a subject of intense debate among intelligence analysts, the mere existence of the threat is enough. In modern warfare, the fear of a weapon is often just as effective as the weapon itself, forcing commercial ship owners to halt their operations. What we are witnessing is not merely a tactical military confrontation, but a devastating blow to the national honor of Iran. This development carries long-term damage to the prestige and standing of the leadership in Tehran, moving beyond simple strategy into a full-blown crisis of power and image. It exposes the fundamental question of who truly controls the levers of power within the Iranian state. The level of seriousness with which the Trump administration is approaching this conflict is now undeniable. When trust is eroded to this extent, every subsequent scenario leans more toward open hostility than toward future cooperation. The period of debate has ended. The focus has shifted entirely to the theater of action, where the rules of engagement are being rewritten in real time. Iran is now facing an ultimatum to quickly reopen the international waters of the Strait of Hormuz as they had previously pledged. This is no longer presented as a choice. Meanwhile, allegations of international law violations continue to pile up against Tehran, further isolating the regime from the global community. Vice President J.D. Vance, alongside Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, has provided direct updates to the president regarding the proceedings in Islamabad. This high-stakes meeting was coordinated by General Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan. These figures are seen as having significant regional influence. Notably, the Pakistani leadership expressed deep appreciation for the diplomatic efforts that prevented a large-scale conflict with India. Such a conflict could have impacted between 30 million and 50 million people. This was not a hypothetical exercise, but a reality that nearly came to fruition, reflecting the fragile balance of security in the Middle East. President Trump emphasized his appreciation for the humanitarian considerations. The negotiations with the Iranian representatives began in the early morning hours and lasted for nearly 20 hours without a break. This duration alone speaks to the intensity and complexity of the issues. However, the ultimate sticking point was identified with absolute clarity: Iran's refusal to abandon its nuclear ambitions. While some positive steps were reportedly made during the talks, they were overshadowed by the primary threat of nuclear technology. Washington remains concerned that such technology could fall into the hands of forces deemed uncontrollable and unpredictable. For the United States, the risk of a nuclear-armed Iran outweighs any potential benefits. The 3 American representatives involved in the talks had managed to establish a level of professional respect and a relatively positive relationship with their Iranian counterparts over time. Yet, these personal dynamics could not alter the fundamental reality of the situation. Tehran maintained a rigid stance on the core issue of nuclear enrichment from the very beginning. For many years, the position of Donald Trump has remained unwavering. Iran will never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. This is not just a campaign slogan. Every detail of the current blockade is designed to reinforce this message to the leadership in Tehran. President Trump further clarified the nature of the blockade strategy. The meeting went well on most points, but the most important one, the nuclear issue, remained unresolved. This confirms that despite any peripheral progress, the core obstacle remains insurmountable. Immediately following this realization, the order was given for the United States Navy to begin the blockade. The naval force is now tasked with stopping all vessels. This marks the definitive transition from diplomacy to field action. The stated goal remains the restoration of the freedom of navigation, where all ships can move normally. However, Washington argues that the reality on the ground has been compromised by Iran's alleged use of maritime mines. This factor has caused the entire global shipping system to hesitate. This accusation serves as the legal and moral foundation for the military intervention currently unfolding. The message from Washington is clear: national leaders will not be subjected to blackmail. Parallel to this, the Navy has been directed to intercept any vessel in international waters suspected of making illegal payments to Iran. This means the blockade is not just a geographic barrier, but a financial and commercial one as well. Any activity involving these illegal fees will no longer be guaranteed safety. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is entering a highly dangerous phase as the plan moves toward the direct removal of underwater threats. United States Navy units have been ordered to begin minesweeping operations, a move that signals Washington's intent to take full control of the strategic waterway. Any force from Iran that opens fire, whether at military or civilian ships, will be met with overwhelming and decisive power. According to American assessments, Iran is currently in a state of severe military weakness. Their naval forces are described as nearly decimated, and their air force is no longer capable. Furthermore, their air defense and radar systems have been paralyzed, a direct consequence of years spent pursuing nuclear technology at the expense of conventional readiness. The reports of the deaths of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and several other high-ranking officials have only added to the sense of a deep power crisis in Tehran. With the leadership structure in shambles, Iran is being forced into a defensive posture that is increasingly difficult to maintain. The blockade is expected to be implemented quickly. Washington insists that Iran will not be allowed to continue profiting from what it calls economic coercion under the guise of maritime security. President Trump has argued that Tehran's goal is not just money, but the ultimate prize of a nuclear arsenal. This ambition makes the current crisis more dangerous. The United States military has been placed on the highest state of alert to handle any remaining scenarios if the conflict continues to escalate. President Trump has directly accused Iran of using global blackmail tactics by creating a danger zone at sea. This tactic forces ships to move closer to the Iranian coast. From a strategic perspective, this is the moment Washington has decided to play its most decisive card. The move is designed to squeeze the Iranian regime. The presence of American destroyers like the USS Frank Peterson and the USS Michael Murphy confirms that the operation is well underway. These vessels are not just symbols of power, they are advanced Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. Each ship is equipped with 96 vertical launch cells. In the current environment, Aegis acts as the central brain, coordinating a vast network of air and sea operations across the entire theater of war. The Aegis system functions like a battlefield conductor, connecting every platform from warships and fighter jets to E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft. It integrates data from F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters, allowing the entire force to share radar information and target data in real time. If a destroyer detects an Iranian drone, that data is immediately transmitted throughout the entire system. If the target bypasses the first layer, the next unit ready. This capability allows the Navy to track and respond to multiple threats simultaneously, even while the ships are maneuvering at speeds of over 55 kilometers per hour. President Trump has declared that the process of clearing the Strait of Hormuz has begun, while Iran has responded with its own set of threats against American forces. The pilots and sailors of the United States Navy and Air Force are now in position, ready for any contingency. The consequences on the battlefield are already becoming visible. The entry of American destroyers into the Strait marks the first large-scale deployment of its kind since the current tensions began. The primary mission is the neutralization of minefields. One scenario being discussed is that Iran's entire strategy was designed to force commercial ships to move near Lavon Island. This area was being used as an unofficial checkpoint. This approach has been compared to a mafia-style protection racket, where control is derived from threats rather than international law. President Trump has been vocal in his criticism, issuing a clear warning that any ship paying these illegal fees risks being intercepted by the U.S. Navy. This is a deliberate move to bankrupt the Iranian regime by cutting off the financial gains they have extracted from maritime instability. It places the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy in a precarious position where their next move could be their last. The likelihood of a strategic shift is low. Meanwhile, underwater drone systems have reportedly been deployed to assist in the detection and disposal of mines. This represents a direct challenge to Iran's efforts. The message from Washington is becoming increasingly clear. The right to control the Strait of Hormuz does not belong to Iran. This shift is forcing Tehran to reconsider. On the other side, Iranian officials have reacted with fury, claiming the failure of the talks was due to excessive American demands. These demands reportedly included Iran's nuclear program, its regional influence, and its network of proxy forces. For Tehran, these proxies are essential strategic tools. The lack of trust between the two nations has made any meaningful agreement nearly impossible to achieve. The Strait of Hormuz has long been Iran's ultimate strategic asset. Relinquishing control over this waterway would mean losing their most significant piece of leverage on the international stage. The Speaker of the Iranian parliament has openly mocked the American delegation. They have claimed that Washington traveled halfway across the world only to achieve nothing of substance. This rhetoric is intended to project strength. Iran continues to maintain that the lifting of sanctions and the control of maritime routes are non-negotiable issues. This has created a paradox where dialogue occurs without compromise. As threats against American warships continue to emanate from Tehran, the region moves closer to the edge of a major conflict. The Strait of Hormuz, with a width of only 34 kilometers at its narrowest point, is a tactical environment where precision is everything. Iran's strategy of forcing ships toward its coastline was a calculated attempt to maximize its control. However, as the U.S. Navy begins operations, this strategy is rapidly diminishing. The contrast between Iran's bold rhetoric and its actual military capacity is becoming more apparent. While they issue defiant statements, their ability to project power has been compromised. The presence of multiple American destroyers indicates that the objective is not just safety, but the establishment of actual control over the strait. If the shipping lanes are reopened under the protection of the United States, Iran will lose its most potent weapon of economic warfare. Protecting the oil tankers of American allies has become a top priority for the Pentagon, even if it requires a prolonged blockade. Vice President Vance has noted that the failure of the talks hurts Iran far more than the United States. This confidence reflects Washington's belief that they hold the upper hand. The technological superiority of the American forces is a key factor. Minesweeping is one of the most dangerous tasks at sea, requiring advanced equipment. The control of the Strait of Hormuz is the strategic boundary that may determine if the current system in Tehran collapses or survives in a weakened state. The American strategy appears to be a well-calculated plan, backed by real-world capability. This is not a short-term reaction, but a long-term goal to neutralize a threat. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyers at the heart of this operation are multi-mission platforms with a displacement of about 9,200 tons. They are over 150 meters long and can reach speeds of more than 55 kilometers per hour. Their armament includes the Mk-41 vertical launch system. In addition to their primary missiles, these ships carry a 5-inch gun, the Phalanx close-in weapon system, and torpedoes. The Phalanx system, a radar-guided automatic cannon, serves as the final line of defense. If a projectile makes it past, the Phalanx is designed to shred it. The MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter is the primary tool for the actual minesweeping mission. This specialized aircraft is capable of towing magnetic and mechanical sweeping devices. Complementing the helicopters is the P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft, which acts as the eye in the sky. It performs surveillance and coordination for the entire operation. The Poseidon ensures that the commanders have a total awareness of the situation. This multi-layered approach demonstrates that the operation is a sophisticated combat system. It combines firepower, technology, and information to create an overwhelming advantage. The Poseidon's advanced radar and sensors allow it to monitor vast areas of the ocean. Geopolitically, the situation is a high-stakes chess match where every move triggers a chain reaction. Iran attempted to turn the Strait into an exclusive zone of control. However, with the U.S. Navy now actively neutralizing those threats, the power dynamic is shifting. If the minefields are cleared, Iran loses its ability to force ships into coastal waters. But the Iranian response could also be tactical, as they may have undeclared minefields held in reserve. This uncertainty creates a layer of psychological warfare. The focus on controlling this waterway is not just a military necessity, but an economic one. Iran will be the first to feel the impact. This also places pressure on China, a major energy consumer that relies on the stability of the Strait of Hormuz for its oil imports. The pressure on Tehran is mounting, forcing them to reconsider their long-term strategy. The big question now is what the next step will be for the Trump administration. As the naval blockade tightens, the possibility of an accidental or intentional clash increases by the hour. The world is watching to see if this leads to conflict. The collapse of the Islamabad talks has set the stage for a confrontation that has been building for decades. With the nuclear issue at the center, there is little room for error. The coming days will determine the fate of the Strait of Hormuz and the future of the Iranian leadership. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you see the situation evolving, and what are the potential consequences for the global economy? Stay tuned for further updates as this drama continues to unfold.